All right. Hello, everybody. This is Colleen with Speaking of Spirits, and I'm here with Gina and Kate. And we are in your office today.
We are. We're in my office. Kate does some Reiki in here with me and Kim Kirkpatrick. And then I do all kinds of other hoodoo, voodoo.
I'll show, a little bit of the office. And there is a bed for massage beds and Reiki. Yeah.
And then I do chakra balancing, and I've got like all of my oils. I do guided meditations. Oh my goodness. I can't ever think of my list of things. I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. I do like past life regressions, shadow work.
Girlfriend, I want to do that.
Yeah, we should.
Yes. So if you are not aware, give everybody how to contact you.
All right. So you can reach me the same way, a couple different ways, if that makes sense. It will more in just a second. So I do my spiritual work under Celeste Sun, and that's for safety purposes because, unfortunately, we have untrustworthy and strange people in this world. So I don't necessarily want my personal information attached to that. Or you can go online, and it's Celeste Sun Psychic Medium Healer Guide on Facebook. And you can message me through that if you have questions or you know that you want to set up to get together. But I have to share a story about yesterday. We were doing a celebration of life for Michelle Gilson, who has been my friend for, I think, 13 plus years. And she was one of my biggest promoters. She told everybody, you need to call Gina for a cake. You need to call Gina to do your wedding. You need to call Gina because, you know, you've lost a child, you've lost a spouse, you're wanting to try to connect with people. And one lady in particular came up to me yesterday, and I recognized her because we're friends on Facebook and we've talked a few times. And she said, I knew you would be here today, and I had to come to meet you in person because I wanted to tell you when you connected me with my husband that it changed my life. It healed me. It took me from wanting to leave this earth to be with him to back living a life and being whole. And she's like, it was miraculous what you were able to do. And it was an interesting reading. I don't always remember them because what I describe to people is I feel like I am a radio and I play whatever music is being sent to me. So sometimes I don't remember what I've said because it's not really me. It's me channeling kind of. But with her, I did remember because, and we're going to talk more about this in this session. That's why I'm going into these details is I could smell. I smelled cedar. And I said, it's like something that's been made from cedar. I said, I want to say that it's like a box, but it's not a box. Well, her husband had made them cedar nightstands. And they had the drawer and the cabinet in them. And she's just like, I can't.
This was yesterday, this happened?
Well, this was when I read for her 10 years ago.
Okay.
Michelle, she was one of Michelle's friends. Okay. And she lives in Boise, or she was living in Boise at the time. She is there now. I don't know the time frames, but he had been gone for about 4 months. And that was the first thing that came through is this very strong smell. You know, like you get those little antique cedar boxes, like the jewelry or
they smell
whatever.
So good.
That's what I literally smelled. And I've had that happen a lot where I smell something, whether it's smoke. Cedar's a big one. I had another one that I did, and I'm like, do you have like a cedar deck? And they're like, no, it's redwood. And I said, I'm smelling cedar, and it's very strong. And she's like, we just put cedar chips down yesterday. She was in Florida. So it's one of those kind of astral projection kind of things too, but she was, the lady from yesterday was just, she was crying and she said, you don't know how much that helped me. And it's like, sometimes I hesitate to share a lot about that side of me because there's a lot of judgment out there and there's a lot of, like I said, not so trustworthy people that you want them to know the other sides of things. But it's people like her yesterday that just, she came up and she hugged me like we'd been best friends our whole entire life. And she's like, I had to be here today because I knew I would be able to meet you. So, but that's just bits and pieces of all the many things I was born with my gifts. And so it has been something I have done my entire life, whether it's psychic readings, I do tarot and oracle cards, I do healings, I do the Reiki, I do energy, chakra balancing, like the shadow work, different things like that, work with guided meditations for people that maybe have anxiety issues, spiritual guidance and counseling. So I would love if any of you are interested in finding out more to give me a call, send me a text, get onto Facebook and message me, and I would love to help you out.
And you do some Reiki healing here as well, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. She's been very kind to invite me in and let me do some sessions here. So it's such a good space when you walk in. I always comment, I think, about how good the energy is in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a great setup space, and you offer a lot of opportunities. So yeah, very appreciative.
Well, and it's really nice because it's a very competitive world, and not a lot of other people want to invite someone who does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Kim invited me in, and I've invited Kate in, and we've talked to Susanna. She's working on getting all of her certifications in Reiki, and I think it's easier to rise when you have the support
Yes.
of all the others around you, not on the backs of the people you're trying to be better than.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, and I'm sorry. We'll get to the podcast here in a second, but anyway, we also put on a class at ISU College of Technology, and it's on paranormal and investigations. And a couple of the students, and one just reached out to me, Kyle.
Oh, awesome.
Yes,
He's been on my mind.
a couple of days ago, and he said, "I just wanted to let you know we're starting our first investigation." And he said, "You were so right that something like you're so right that trying to herd people is worse than herding cats." And and that's when you talk about people being competitive with each other. He took the class, and he was really interested in setting up his own team, and he was almost afraid to approach us and tell us that. And I thinking that's fantastic. And I told him, when I replied on the text, I said, "I'm so happy for you, and if there's any gear that you need for the investigation that we might have, you're welcome to borrow it." I'm so not competitive that way.
Yeah.
I think it's great because someday we're going to want to not do this anymore. You know,
Or not
or
do it
the
as
paranormal
often,
as
or what, you
often,
know.
and if we can
Yeah.
throw cases to him and he throws some to us, and it's a big, huge world, and there's no reason to be competitive. Lift each other up, don't tear each other down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
In like with manifestation, any energy work, with Reiki especially, they really teach that there's enough for everybody. Like, there's no reason we need to compete. There's
Right.
plenty of resources out there. You're not stealing from
no.
anybody. So yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of what you guys are saying.
Well, and
Lift
it was
each other
cool.
up.
Team together.
Because Kyle reached out to our team because of an unusual activity in his home. And he actually has come in and worked with me doing some practicing of shielding and protection and different things like that too. So that's some of the other stuff. I clear houses, work with people to learn how to shield if you're empathic. It can get really overwhelming right now. And so learning how to block that out a little bit, but still be able to feel it so you can see what's going on, but you're not bombarded by the emotion.
Well, and most of the cases we get are usually people who have gifts, but they're not aware of the gifts. So they may have tried to put a lid on it their whole life, and then all of a sudden it just breaks free and everything's going on, and they have not wanted to either admit, or they don't know that that they're an empath or a medium or whatever gift that they have. So I think that most of our clients probably have a gift of some sort. And then
and it
work with
kind
them.
of falls into but earlier I was saying, I don't need the microphone. I am naturally loud. And the other side is like that too. You have things you might be able to shield most things. But then you get a loudmouth like me that's trying to come through, or maybe there's something urgent they're trying to warn you,
Right.
or they're like trying to get a message through to their family, and they come in like a marching band. And it really can overwhelm people that aren't used to filtering out the very powerful, I need you now kind of energy.
Right.
So,
So in talking about that, this episode was going to center around ESP. I hope that didn't go to sleep. It's probably still recording, just our end. ESP and gifts, like what people have, the Claire gifts. So we were going to talk about those. And also, it's kind of interesting because when I was digging into this a little bit more from the side of the skeptic, right? So, not that I'm a skeptic in this, but there's that skeptical side of particularly the medical practice, where they want to tie everything to childhood trauma or some kind of abuse situation or something like that. And it's really frustrating to me that we still have, you would think in 2024 that we would have a medical community that's a little more receptive to some of this stuff.
Some of them are, but it's a very small percentage. But I've been lucky to run, especially with the holistic part.
Yeah.
A couple of the last few doctors, the one was like, write down what you're taking because I have thyroid problems and I want to feel better too. And it's like, but a lot of the others are like, that's not, pharmaceutically grade, blah, blah, blah. We have no proof. And it's like, well, my proof is I take this herb or this supplement and I feel better. There's my scientific proof.
Right.
This makes me feel better,
Yeah, so why don't you guys talk about some of the Claires? You were reading up a little bit on this too.
Yeah, I think the ones that people know really well, clairaudience, where you can hear, clairvoyance, where you can see, and then, let's see, there's taste, there's clair, I can't remember.
Sentience
is that the knowing? There's like clair knowing.
Well, just describe them. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, we've done several presentations on the clairs.
Yeah, we have, and I wonder if I have.
Yeah, just
I have it on my phone.
What the physical things are, the tasting, what other?
Yeah, so let's see, taste, sight, basically all your senses. There's knowing, there's emotion, and there is
the smell.
Audience,
smell,
which is your hearing.
Yeah, but all of them are very interesting, and I think I would argue that everyone probably is strong in at least one area, and a lot of people are strong in a lot of areas. I feel like for me personally, I have knowing, like people will ask me questions and I already have the answers in my head before they finish their questions, and I tend to be pretty spot on with that. I know you guys are gifted in that way too, but I think they're really interesting. There's others too, other ESPs. We were just talking about, is it
Pyrokinesis?
Kinesis, yeah. That would be one, being able to move objects, telekinesis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's honestly a lot out there if you're looking for it. And I'm sure the list could really go on.
Have you seen a living person do telekinesis?
I actually did when I was a child. I don't know the exact name. I've heard it called sliders, but it's because I conduct energy, whether that's my energy healing or my Reiki. I blow light bulbs out. I turn televisions off. I've blown the screens.
For me, it was street lights.
Oh,
ever since I was a kid.
You go
when
past
if I'm really worked up on something, I'll be driving down the road and you just see them go black, 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 black as I go by them. Yeah, and even my mom said, "Would you stop?" Because I'd be all worked up over something, and I didn't know I was doing it. She goes, "It is you."
Yeah, my daughter, when she was probably 13 or 14. She has this horrible phobia of cliffs, and we were on a pretty narrow road going up in the hills looking at a property, and she was on the side with the cliff, and she got so upset that she stalled the car out. She literally killed my battery. I couldn't get it to turn on, and then she was freaking out more, and I'm like, you need to stop. You did this. And she's like, I didn't do it. I said, yes, you did. Calm down. The second she calmed down and was breathing okay, car turned right on. So it's interesting. But when I was a little kid, one of my mom's big things was, if you're mad, you don't slam your door. And I would go stomping into my room, 8 years old, 10 years old, and my door would slam and my mom would come in. I told you not. And I'm like, I didn't touch the door. And then there would be times like the book would come off the shelf or something, and my mom would be like, Okay, well, maybe that wasn't you.
We just had a minor earthquake right here at your bookcase.
Yeah, it was because you slammed the door and it made that book. Yeah. So, and I wasn't intentionally doing it. I've tried now.
I think it's just that conduction of energy.
Yeah.
That.
Because with the blowing light bulbs and stuff, it's usually if I'm in deep thought. It used to only be super emotion, like being really angry.
That was me.
Like you're mad and you'd hit the light switch and the light would go out. But mine, I can be just like in really deep thought. And I'll touch the light switch or I'll touch the stove and blow the fuse out and have to go down and flip the fuse back.
So we'll talk about the case we have with pyrokinesis.
Yes. So we had a home that had activity. We went out really quick because part of that was affecting the children.
Yes.
And we are on top of that. It's like most of the things we can teach people how to live with it or how to feel more in control of saying, okay, you can be here with us, but don't bug us in the middle of the night and wake us up. Well, this particular house, they had very chaotic energy. Would you say that?
Boy, that's, yeah.
Yeah. The humans that lived there were very chaotic, to be generous with the description. And they would fight and be angry. I believe there may have been substance issues going on in the home. We don't know that for sure, but that often plays a part of it. And they lit the stove on fire. They weren't even in the room, were they? It was like the smoke alarm started going off. And their stove was like on fire. the stove top. And it was
an electric stove.
Yeah.
Not gas. And the first thing we noticed in driving in, because it was a longer driveway and we come in to the back of the house, like mine, was all of the burned out appliances.
Yeah.
That had been burned. Microwaves, electric stove, just...
Was it a dishwasher or something?
I think so. There was a lot of different things back there, and they had all been burned.
Yeah, like that can happen because of a power surge, but usually not multiple times. And they said didn't they say they'd had someone in to check the electrical if it needed rewired or, and that was not the situation. But it was their, I don't think that they were doing it on purpose at all. But I think their chaos and their anger and their just very volatile energy in that home. And it does. It affects, I will be, if I'm frustrated and I'm touching my phone, I'm like, I'm touching you. And it won't even read my, and it's like, whoo,
yep.
And then it'll read my finger. But yeah, it's like, don't acknowledge that.
My mom couldn't wear a watch because it would, as soon as she put it on, it would start like the old, not a digital.
Right. The wind up
and the second hand would start and then it just gets faster and faster and faster and faster and just start running. And she's multiple watches over her whole life. Couldn't wear a watch. So it happens.
Yeah.
So
didn't they have something that went on in their fireplace too? I'm trying to remember if it was them or
somewhere else. That downstairs fireplace.
Yeah.
There was something that I don't remember.
The spark back up after it was out.
Maybe.
I can't remember what it was. Something to do with the fireplace.
Maybe I'd have to go back and look at the notes. So you deal with these cases, and we give people pointers, like especially something like this. It can turn into not only pyrokinesis, but poltergeist activity. And, you get something this big happening. It's really important for the family to figure out how to look to lower that stress. And so we worked with this family several times, and none of the advice was taken, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And finally you have to say, we're kind of done working with you. And I feel always terrible about doing that. But you have something like this going on in your life. You have to help yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to make positive changes in your life so that you can make positive changes in your life. And it's really difficult when you get into these loops.
Well, and we went above and beyond on that. I called in all of my drum circle friends.
That was the third time we were there.
Yeah, all of my healer friends and Native Americans. And we had smudging and bells and sound bowls and drums, and we went through that house chanting and praying, and I mean, we went above and beyond for this family. And nope, stuff's still going on. Well, did you do this? No. Well, how about that? Are you doing that? No. Did you stop doing? No. And it's like, okay, so if you keep pouring gas on yourself and lighting a match, we can't not prevent you from catching on fire.
Right.
You know, you need to stop your behaviors that are leading this or stoking it.
Well, and medical doctors say the same things, right? You go to the doctor and they give you advice and you're not taking it, but you're going in there for the same complaint over and over again. Yeah. And it can be healed. There's only so much somebody can do.
Right.
So, you know.
Reduce your sodium intake if you have cholesterol, heart, blood pressure, and people are like salting their Doritos. You know, it's like there's not enough medicine to switch that.
So I was also looking at ESP from like ESP, the thought thing, right? Mm-hmm. There's like, I don't know, thousands of cases out there that have been written about like twins, identical twins having that. Mm-hmm. And even when they're separated.
In different states.
Maybe adopted out and they never kept track. I mean, they don't know where their twin lives. They just know they were a twin. And feeling like a broken arm or that happened to the other twin, and then they meet years later and start comparing notes and like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, even more basic right now, there's a social media trend with twins where they put one twin on one side of the wall and then another on the other side, and they ask them to do basic stuff. And it's interesting just to see how much they match up, like hold up a hand and they both hold up their right hand, or like do a dance move and they both do the same dance move. Like, it's just interesting to see anyways when they're close. So I'm sure far apart, there's a lot of stuff that happens too that they can feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I read about, I think they were brothers, and they were separated at birth. They didn't know they had a twin. Later, at a university, I think, they didn't live that far apart. They lived in the same state, but in different towns, and they went to college together, and they learned that they both had a pet. They named it the same name. It was the same breed of dog. They both were in the same, that I think how they met was they both were majoring in the same thing at the university. And everybody was like, hey, Mark. And he's like, I'm Mike. And then they realized that was because they had a twin there. And like the first person that they dated, this kind of car or the color of car, it was crazy. The similar, and had never known each other.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it comes from even so the clairvoyant part or the precognitive part. That's all of this part of these gifts, right, that are out there. And I found the story of clairvoyance, and this was from 1958. Roger Phelan had a dream in September of 58 about, or Mrs. Roger Phelan, about her daughter, Vivian, who was then 20 months old. Mrs. Phelan wrote, I vividly dreamt of entering Vivian's room, and much to my shock found her sitting on the sill of a bay window, one leg atop, the other dangling over the edge, and she was gaily babbling along, waving her little arms in total unconcern of any danger, when suddenly she started to lose her balance and was about to fall off the 3-foot drop. Which isn't that big a drop, but for a baby it is. Okay. Yeah. About 3 weeks later, after Mrs. Phelan had been continuously checking on her daughter, she found Vivian in the position and place that she'd seen in her dream and was able to avoid possible accident. This researcher who had talked to her corroborated the information with her husband because she had relayed this dream. Dream wasn't really a dream. It was the clairvoyance, right? And so he corroborated it. So it was pretty interesting. There's so many thousands, tens of thousands of stories like this out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of one that I haven't even thought about for a long time. But my family was looking to move into a new place, and in front had a canal. And that night, my dad had a dream, and I was probably like 4 or 5. I was really young at the time. My dad had a dream that I had drowned, and I came upstairs that morning, and in kid language basically was like, I had a dream I was in water and I couldn't get out. And so my family was just like, okay, we'll not buy this
Passing
house.
on that house.
Yeah. So how many people does that happen to? And they just don't, like, I would have never thought that might have been a Claire gift. Like,
Right.
Well, you just like opened up a memory for me that I didn't know. So we were in Boise and we had a son and we were looking at houses and it was out in the country, which is not the country over there anymore, but it was 30 years ago. And it had a canal. And I said, we're not living by water. And my husband at the time was like, why not? It's beautiful. And, da, da, da. And I'm like, I have a really bad feeling. We're not living by a canal. And my daughter, who was born like 3 or 4 years later, at about age 2, we'd moved to Pocatello, and she didn't speak very well. She spoke gibberish. The screen kicked over.
Oh, okay.
She spoke gibberish. We called it Arabic. And
Arabic.
We did, because it was Arabic, English, and Babel. And so, as clear as day, she gets up, she walks over to the window, and she goes, Mama. And I said, what? And she goes, remember when I drowned in the pool? What? Nothing, Mama. And went and got back on her bed. To this day, she's scared of water. She's scared to go, she gets anxiety to go over a bridge, to go in deep water, or like water you can't see, like river or lake. And I will bet you anything that she had drowned or had something. But when you were talking about that, it was like I couldn't put my finger on it. But I was just like, I am not having a house next to water.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, I want to say I was around 4. And my mom had precognitive gifts like crazy. And we were going to spend the day at a lake, and I didn't have a bathing suit. So my mom knew on the way to the lake we could have to stop at Kmart, get me a bathing suit, right? And so this was like the next day. Well, that night my mom knew that I was going to drown, and I drowned in it's like a little yellow bathing suit with brown polka dots. And she said, okay, I'm going to keep an eye on her tomorrow. And by then, my dad was aware of all of these gifts, because she saved us bacon in the airplanes many times. And on the way to the lake to meet the other family, we were meeting for the picnic. Kmart had the only bathing suit they had for my size and age was the yellow with brown polka dots. My mom's like, great. So we're at the lake, and she's keeping a really strong eye on me, but there were quicksand holes on the shore of the lake.
Oh, jeez.
And so I'm waiting, and I'm in water just past my ankles, and I'm splashing around the water. And thankfully, the older boys were playing on a log that was floating just not too far away in the water, and they're spinning the log and doing all the boy things that they do, right? And I was walking, and then whoop, down I went. And I was gone, and my mom was looking for me, and I was gone. And the boys saw me go under, and they were able to swim over and reach around until they grabbed my hair and pulled me out. By then I was not breathing, and so they did CPR and brought me back. But my mom was like, that's it. If I have one more event like this with the kids, we're just not going. It was like, it was it. That was it for her.
That's insane.
Yeah. So it's just people have these gifts. It's amazing, you know.
Yeah, I used to more dream of when people were going to pass. And it was weird because it wouldn't always be exact. Sometimes it would be the same person or a part of what actually happened, but in a different, for example, my grandma, I had dreamt my grandma died and I was 17. And I dreamt I came home from school and the garage was filled with flowers. Like they have those stands that look like ladders, and they have all the potted plants and flowers on them. And I walk into my garage and there's, 100 different plants and bouquets. And there was a guy and he was fixing them. And I said, what are you doing? And he goes, your grandma died. And I said, oh. And I walked over and opened their way in the house, and that was it. Well, my grandma died 2 days later. And at her funeral, the room you could smell when you walked into the funeral home, the flowers. There was so many. But I didn't dream of a funeral home. It was in my garage. But I was at home when my aunt called me. My mom and dad had left town. It was the first time they left town and let me stay at home. And I was at home and had, just before I went to school on Tuesday morning, they called to say that she had passed.
I'm sure that most of the people who listen to these kind of podcasts have had their own experiences, and who's on the phone, or you think of your friend and then boom, they're on the phone, or just those. There's no. What do we say? There's no.
Coincidence?
Yes, thank you. I come up with a word. No coincidences out there. It's just the way that the universe works. We're all connected, and it's an amazing thing. So.
Well, and a lot of people get frustrated, and I used to get really frustrated because there's not always rhyme and reason and cohesion, and everything's exactly the same. But what I have learned, and what I have been told many times, is the more you acknowledge that and follow it, whether it is avoid going to the lake that day, or it is, gosh, Kate's on my mind, I need to call her, and you actually do it, the stronger those get. It's like working a muscle. The more you bench press or whatever, the stronger those muscles get. The easier it is to bench press, the more you bench press, the stronger it gets. And that's with this intuition or any of the premonition type things. The more you acknowledge it and the more you act on it, then the next time, it's not that it's perfectly clear, but sometimes it's more clear, or you get a little more notice, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging with us today. We hope you enjoyed this topic, and stay tuned for more content from Speaking of Spirits.